The funeral was smaller than I expected, not because he lacked people in his life, but because grief thins gatherings the way winter thins trees. People come closer to the trunk, fewer leaves, more space between bodies. The ground was still damp from the night before. Someone had laid artificial grass over the mud, a courtesy that felt unnecessary. Shoes still sank. The imam's voice was even, practiced. The prayers moved forward without pause, as if time had agreed to behave. I stood where I was told to stand. I nodded when people nodded at me. I accepted hands on my shoulder and phrases that had been used on me before, when my mother died, when a neighbor's child died, when death passed through like weather. My husband's children stood together a few steps away, not holding each other, just aligned. Their faces were composed in a way that suggested rehearsal or relief or something I did not yet have language for. They were adults, old enough to vote, to marry, to carry their own histories. But in moments like this, family roles revert. They were the children. I was the widow. The shape of the scene was familiar enough that no one questioned it. When the coffin was lowered, there was no dramatic sound, just the soft scrape of rope, the thud muted by earth. The finality arrived without ceremony. I felt nothing sharp, only a widening emptiness, like a room with furniture removed. My phone vibrated in my hand. At first I thought it was a reflex, my body reacting to the moment, but it vibrated again, insistently against my palm. I looked down. Unknown number. I'm alive. I'm not in the coffin. The world did not tilt. There was no cinematic collapse. My breath did not catch. Instead, my chest tightened the way it does when something does not fit into any available category. I locked the phone without responding. The imam finished. People began to disperse. A few approached me, murmuring. I nodded, my face arranged correctly. When the children came closer, one of them asked if I was all right. I said yes, because that was easier than saying nothing. When they stepped away, I unlocked the phone again. Me. Who are you? The reply came quickly. I can't say. They are watching us. Don't trust the children. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Grief is supposed to be loud, or at least obvious. What I felt instead was an intrusion, like a private room suddenly occupied by a stranger who refused to leave. I slipped the phone into my bag and stood still until the last person walked away. That night I did not cry. I made tea I did not drink. I sat on the edge of the bed we had shared and noticed how undisturbed the sheets were on his side. He had been ill, yes. There had been doctors, tests, whispers. The death itself had been efficient. Hospital, paperwork, arrangements made by his eldest child, who knew how to speak firmly to administrators. It all made sense, which was what unsettled me most. At midnight, the phone vibrated again. Please be careful. I typed and erased several responses before sending nothing. Sleep came in fragments, dreams without narrative. In the morning, I woke with a clarity that felt borrowed. I showered, I dressed, I ate toast. Grief stayed in the background, waiting. Over the next days, people checked on me. The children handled logistics. They were polite, efficient, subtly directive. They suggested I rest, that I not involve myself in stressful details. They spoke gently, as one does to someone temporarily diminished. I let them. I watched instead. Small things began to surface, not revelations, but adjustments. A hospital form signed by someone else's hand, a medication list that did not align with what I remembered, a closed-door conversation that stopped when I entered the room. None of it proved anything, but together they formed a pattern of exclusion disguised as care. The messages continued, never long, never explanatory. Timing matters. Don't confront anyone yet. You have more control than you think. I did not know whether to believe any of it, but disbelief required effort I did not have. So I held the information loosely, the way one holds a fragile object whose purpose is unclear. I thought about my husband, not as the man in the coffin, but as the man who avoided hospitals, who disliked being managed, who once told me, half joking, "If I ever disappear, look at the paperwork first." I had laughed then. A week after the funeral, I asked for a copy of the death certificate. There was a pause, not long enough to be rude, long enough to register. "It's being processed," his second child said. "These things take time." "I understand," I replied, and meant something else entirely. The next message arrived that evening. "Ask for the transport records." That was when fear finally entered the room. Not panic, not hysteria, fear with edges. I requested the records the next day, calmly, professionally. I did not accuse. I framed it as routine. The hospital administrator hesitated, then said she would need approval. "From whom?" I asked. She said a name, not mine. Authority does not always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it appears as a procedural inconvenience that cannot be smoothed over. 2 days later, I was called into an office. There were documents on the desk, a supervisor present. A discrepancy had been found. Minor, but undeniable. A body transferred under the correct name, but from the wrong ward. A signature that did not match the timestamp. I said nothing. Silence is underestimated. The children were called in separately, not together. Questions were asked, not accusations. Questions that required answers aligned with records. That evening, my phone vibrated one last time. "I'm safe. That's all I can say." I did not reply. The truth, when it surfaced, did not arrive as a single revelation. It emerged in pieces. My husband had not died when we were told. A medical error had occurred, followed by panic, followed by decisions made too quickly by people who believed they were protecting something, reputations, stability, control. The children had known part of it, not all, enough to stay silent, enough to justify their behavior to themselves. My husband was alive, recovering elsewhere, unable to contact me directly without risking consequences that were still unfolding. There was no reunion, not yet, no dramatic confrontation, just the slow reassembly of reality. I moved out of the house temporarily, not in anger, in clarity. The children did not apologize, they explained. Explanations are easier. Authority continued its work, quietly, relentlessly. Grief did not disappear, it changed shape. It became something heavier, but more honest. I visit the graves sometimes, not out of sadness but recognition, a marker for a life interrupted, for trust fractured, for the cost of silence. I do not know what will happen next. Some relationships will not survive this. Others may, altered beyond comfort. What I know is this: I was underestimated because I was grieving, and because of that, I was given time to see clearly. Power did not return to me with noise. It returned because I waited.